Have you ever wondered if the reality you know is just an illusion? What if everything we believe to be solid and certain is, in fact, a grand cosmic game? In this video, we will explore the revolutionary ideas of Alan Watts that will shake your deepest beliefs. Discover why he believes that existence is more like a magical symphony than a series of random events. Get ready to have your mind expanded and see the world in a totally new way in just a few minutes. Don't go anywhere. Imagine yourself, a small child, looking at the world with curious and surprised eyes. The simple act of existing seems so natural, yet at the same time, deeply strange. For Alan Watts, one of the great philosophers of the 20th century, this feeling never disappeared. From an early age, Watts felt a profound strangeness regarding existence. He saw the world with a mix of admiration and perplexity. For him, it was not just about living, but constantly wondering why everything is the way it is. Why are we here? What is all this that we call reality? This sense of strangeness was a driving force in Watts' life. He sought answers in books, teachers, and experiences, diving deeply into both Eastern and Western philosophy. He wanted to understand this peculiarity of existence that so fascinated him. But what exactly is this strangeness that Watts speaks of? It's that feeling that, no matter how hard we try to understand the world, it always seems to escape our definitions and explanations. It's like trying to hold a handful of sand. The tighter we squeeze, the more it slips through our fingers. So, what is reality? Is it something we can fully understand, or is it an eternal enigma? Watts suggests that perhaps the true beauty of existence lies precisely in its strangeness, in its mystery. And this perception can lead us to a deeper appreciation of life. What do you think? Can we really understand reality, or are we destined to only glimpse its shadows and reflections? Think about the concept of strange. What does it mean for something to be strange? Alan Watts invites us to reflect on this, proposing an interesting duality between the strange and the plain. For him, the strange is what stands out, what is unique, while the plain is the homogeneous background, the undifferentiated mass of existence. Imagine you are in an art gallery, and among hundreds of paintings, one in particular catches your attention. This painting is the strange, the unique, because it stands out from the plain, the common. It is the contrast that makes something perceptible, that gives form and meaning. This idea can be applied to us, human beings. Each of us is unique with our own characteristics, thoughts, and feelings. This uniqueness sets us apart from the undifferentiated plane of humanity. But at the same time, this strangeness is what connects us. We are all strange, all unique, and it is in this diversity that we find the beauty of existence. Watts leads us to think about how we see and understand reality. Often, we classify what is strange as something we do not fully understand that causes us discomfort or fascination. But what if the strange is simply a manifestation of the complexity of existence, an expression of the infinite variety of life? He suggests that instead of fearing or rejecting the strange, we should embrace it. We should recognize that strangeness is an essential part of what makes us human and what makes life interesting. After all, if everything were plain and homogeneous, there would be nothing to spark our curiosity, nothing to inspire us to explore and learn. This duality is also reflected in nature. Think of the unique shapes of a tree, the unpredictable patterns of a cloud, or the infinite diversity of animal species. Each element of nature is unique, strange in its own way, but together they make up the wonderful art of life. So, how can we apply this philosophy to our lives? Perhaps the key lies in appreciating and celebrating strangeness, both in ourselves and in others, in seeing diversity not as a threat, but as an opportunity for growth and learning, in recognizing that behind every face, every culture, every experience, there is a unique and valuable story. At some point, have you ever asked yourself, why is existence like this? This is a profound question that resonates in the minds of many of us. Alan Watts also asked himself this question, but along his philosophical journey, he began to realize that perhaps we were asking the wrong question. Instead of asking why, we should ask how. The question why seeks a reason or purpose, something that explains the origin and purpose of things. However, as Watts observed, this search can be endless and often unsatisfactory. We can get caught in an infinite cycle of questions, never finding a definitive answer. On the other hand, the question, how, leads us to examine the processes and mechanisms that shape reality. Instead of seeking a final purpose, we ask about the ways in which existence manifests. How does the universe work? How do natural phenomena occur? These questions lead us to a more practical and observable understanding of reality. Watts argues that by focusing on the how, we begin to appreciate the complexity and beauty of natural processes. Instead of getting lost in abstractions about why we are here, we start to observe and understand how life unfolds. And this shift in perspective can be liberating. Think, for example, about the growth of a tree. Asking, why does a tree grow, may lead us to complex philosophical or theological considerations. However, asking, how does a tree grow, directs us to study photosynthesis, nutrient absorption, and interaction with the environment. This knowledge is not only more accessible, but also allows us to appreciate the phenomena more deeply. This transition can also be applied to our own lives. Instead of constantly asking ourselves, why am I here? Or what is the purpose of my life? We can ask, how can I live better? Or how can I contribute to the well-being of others? These questions lead us to concrete actions and help us find meaning through direct experience. Furthermore, by understanding the how, we can begin to see patterns and interconnections that previously went unnoticed. Watts encourages us to observe reality with curious and open eyes, to see the dance of atoms, the symphony of natural forces, and the interdependence of all living beings. It is in this understanding that we find a different kind of meaning, one rooted in admiration and respect for the complexity of life. So, what do you think? Can changing our question from why to how lead us to a deeper understanding and a more authentic connection with reality? Alan Watts had a fascinating way of making us look at reality with new eyes. When it comes to investigating existence, science plays a fundamental role. But how exactly does science approach the question, what is reality? And why is this investigation so challenging? Science seeks to understand reality through measurable forms, structures, and patterns. Think of the wonders of biology, physics, and chemistry. Each field studies different aspects of the natural world, trying to uncover the secrets that sustain our existence. Watts invites us to reflect on this scientific quest as a journey of continuous discoveries. Let's consider a classic example, the structure of matter. Science has taught us that everything around us, including ourselves, is made up of atoms. Initially, we imagine atoms as small solid spheres. But as scientific investigation progressed, we realized that atoms are composed of even smaller particles, protons, neutrons, and electrons. And when we look even closer, these particles reveal themselves as patterns of energy, almost as if the solid substance we think we know is an illusion. This transformation in our understanding of matter leads us to an intriguing reflection. If the seemingly solid substance of our world dissolves into patterns of energy under microscopic examination, what does this tell us about the nature of reality? Watts suggests that reality may be much more fluid and dynamic than we imagine, and that our perception of solidity is, in many ways, a construction of our mind. Quantum physics, for example, presents us with a world where particles can exist in multiple states at once, where observation can influence the behavior of phenomena, and where certainty gives way to probability. This scientific vision challenges us to reassess our traditional conceptions of reality. But science also faces its limitations. When we try to answer the question, what is reality, in purely material terms, we encounter a problem. Reality, in its essence, seems to be something that eludes a simple and direct definition. As Watts points out, every substance we analyze deeply ends up transforming into patterns and interactions. The very idea of a fundamental substance may be illusory. Watts invites us to consider that perhaps reality is not something that can be completely dissected and understood in material terms. Perhaps, instead of looking for an ultimate substance, we should appreciate the dance of patterns, the interactions, and the processes that make up the world we experience. After all, scientific investigation, with all its discoveries and revelations, shows us that reality is profoundly complex and wonderfully mysterious. So, where does this leave us? Can science, with all its powerful tools, ever give us a definitive answer to what reality is? Or are we destined to continue exploring, discovering, and marveling at the depth and beauty of the universe? Let's think for a moment about how we classify the world around us. From a young age, we learn to place things into categories: animals, plants, objects, feelings. These classifications help us understand the complexity of the world. However, Alan Watts warns us about the limitations of this habit. Classifying is a powerful tool, but it can also be a trap. By creating categories, we make distinctions between internal and external groups. For example, when we think of humans and animals, we draw a clear line between us and the rest of the animal kingdom. But this line, while useful in certain contexts, is also arbitrary. We are all part of life, and these divisions can obscure this fundamental truth. Watts explores the idea that our classifications, no matter how useful, never capture the totality of reality. Every group we create is a simplification, an attempt to impose order on chaos, but reality itself is much more fluid and interconnected than our categories suggest. Think of the diversity of life on the planet. When we look at an ecosystem, we see a complex web of relationships and interdependencies. Plants are not just plants. They are part of a system that includes soil, water, climate, and a myriad of organisms. By trying to classify each element separately, we may lose sight of the bigger picture, the totality of the ecosystem. Watts argues that this limitation applies to all our classification efforts. Consider the attempt to define the group of all groups. It is an impossible task because any definition would exclude something. This shows us the impossibility of understanding reality absolutely through categories and classifications. This reflection leads to an intriguing conclusion. Perhaps reality cannot be completely understood through classifications and distinctions. Perhaps, by trying to define and categorize everything, we end up creating a fragmented view of the world. Watts encourages us to look beyond categories and perceive the interconnection of all things. Moreover, he reminds us that language, our primary tool for classification, has its own limitations. The words we use to describe the world are only symbols, representations that never fully capture the essence of what they describe. When we say tree, we are referring to a complex living entity that goes far beyond the word. This leads to a question. How can we approach a more holistic understanding of reality? Watts suggests that we must be willing to question our assumptions, challenge our categories, and embrace the complexity of the world without trying to reduce it to simple definitions. Are we ready to let go of our classifications and see reality in a more integrated and interconnected way? How would this change our perception and our relationship with the world? Have you ever thought that reality, as we perceive it, might be an illusion? Alan Watts, inspired by Eastern philosophy, especially the concepts of Maya and Matra, leads us to reflect on the illusory nature of substance. Let's start with Maya. In Hindu philosophy, Maya is the term used to describe the illusion or veil that covers the true nature of reality. It is the deceptive appearance of the material world which makes us believe that things are solid and permanent when, in fact, they are transient and interconnected. Watts invites us to think about how we perceive the world. We see solid objects, distinct people, and isolated events. But what if all this is a grand performance, a cosmic magic that distracts us from the true essence of being? The word matter also has roots that connect to this idea of illusion, derived from the Latin materia, meaning substance, and connected to the Sanskrit word matra, meaning measure or form. We can see how matter is perceived through forms and measurements. But upon examining matter at microscopic levels, we find that these forms and substances dissolve into energetic patterns and dynamic interactions. Watts uses this to illustrate that what we consider material reality is actually a perceptual construct. Watts suggests that living bound to the idea of a solid and separate reality is like living in a dream. That is why he refers to the world as an illusion or a game. Not in the sense that nothing is real, but that our perception of reality is limited and often misleading. He encourages us to see the world as a magical phenomenon where everything is in constant change and movement, and where appearances can deceive. To illustrate this, he often used the metaphor of the theater. Imagine that life is a play, where all the actors play their roles seriously, but behind the scenes, everyone knows it is just a game. If we can see life this way, we can free ourselves from the worries and anxieties that come from trying to grasp the unattainable and believing in a solid and immutable reality. This perspective can be profoundly liberating. By realizing that substance is an illusion, we can begin to see life as a continuous flow of experiences where everything is interconnected. This helps us let go of our fixed ideas and embrace uncertainty and change more easily. Moreover, recognizing the illusory nature of reality can lead us to greater compassion and empathy. If all distinctions are ultimately illusory, then the barriers we create between ourselves and others are too. This can inspire us to see beyond superficial differences and recognize the underlying unity of all existence. Watts invites us to experience life with a sense of play and wonder, to appreciate the beauty and complexity of the cosmic game in which we are all involved. What do you think? Can viewing life as a game or illusion change our way of living and interacting with the world? How can this perspective influence our choices and relationships? One of Alan Watts's metaphors is the idea that existence is like a symphony, where each element plays its role in a unique and authentic way, without referring to anything beyond itself. Watts speaks of seeing life not as a task to be completed or a problem to be solved, but as music to be enjoyed. Think about it for a moment that life is music. In music, each note has its own value and importance, but its full meaning is only revealed when all the notes come together in a melody. Watts suggests that existence works in the same way. Each event, each being, each moment has its place in the great concert of life, contributing to the total harmony of the universe. Watts uses vivid examples to illustrate this idea. He says, "Giraffes are giraffing, and stars are starring." What does he mean by this? It's simple. Everything in the universe is simply being what it is. Giraffes do not try to be anything other than giraffes, and stars have no other purpose than to shine. Thus, everything in the universe plays its role naturally, without effort or pretension. This metaphor leads us to a deep reflection on how we live our lives. Often, we are so concerned with achieving goals, solving problems, and seeking meaning that we forget to simply live. We are so focused on the destination that we miss the beauty of the journey. But what if, as Watts suggests, the very existence is the goal? What if life is about being fully present in the moment, enjoying every note of the symphony? Think of a piece of music. You do not listen to music just to reach the last note. Every chord, every melody is valuable in itself. Likewise, every moment of life is precious and worthy of being fully lived. When we see life as a symphony, we begin to value every experience, every emotion, every interaction as part of a larger and more beautiful composition. Watts also challenges us to abandon the idea that life needs an external meaning. In music, the beauty lies in the music itself, not in some goal outside it. Similarly, he suggests that life does not need an external purpose to be meaningful. The very experience of living, with all its complexities and mysteries, is enough. This perspective can help us find peace and contentment in the here and now. Instead of incessantly searching for a purpose or meaning, we can learn to be present and appreciate the beauty of existence. We can allow ourselves to be like the giraffes that giraffe and the stars that star, simply being what we are. So what does this mean for us in our daily lives? Perhaps it means finding joy in the little things, valuing relationships and experiences, and embracing uncertainty and change as part of the symphony of life. Can we really live like this, seeing life as music to be enjoyed instead of a problem to be solved? Subscribe to our channel and enjoy the video appearing on the screen.